I actually come from the U.S. I came to Canada in 1981, first to Montreal, and in 1991 to Ottawa. So I was born and raised in the state of Wisconsin. In Madison, Wisconsin is where I grew up, and I did my education there. I got my bachelor, my master, and my PhD at the University of Wisconsin. My initial studies were actually in the Russian area. And believe it or not, I started learning Russian in grade 11 in high school. It's hard to believe that one could even do that, but my high school offered this. And I've been studying the Russian language ever since. It's a language that requires a lot of study. And then also learned German and brought together that kind of European side and the Russian side. I like to think my background allows me to look at issues from a whole range of perspectives. Having grown up in a really powerful country, perhaps the most powerful country in the world, the U.S., I have to admit, when I first moved to Canada, I thought, I'd always hear these discussions, what's the Canadian approach? I'd think, oh, well, does it matter what the Canadian approach is? And over time I began to realize it does matter, that smaller countries can also have quite an influence, particularly if they stake out a kind of particular position, as Canada historically has done in terms of promoting values of peace, conflict resolution, multilateralism, things like this. And then in terms of my studies, because I started out on the Russian side and then moved over to kind of studying the European side later in my career, I feel I can look at these issues from both sides, try to understand the perspective of different societies, different political systems. And that kind of understanding to me is crucial if you're going to really try to look for solutions to problems, because if you always only look at it from your own perspective, you'll never be able to really communicate well and to find solutions. So I hope that's what I bring to my field of study. I try to bring that to my research and my teaching. The European Union funds chairs, teaching chairs actually, called Jean Monnet chairs, named after one of the key figures in the development of the European integration process. And I have gotten in a competition one of those chairs called the Jean Monnet chair in the European Union's relations with Russia and its eastern neighborhood. Now that's a big term, but what it means is that my research focuses on the relationship between the European Union and those countries to the east that aren't part of the Union, namely Russia and countries like Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, and other countries that are its neighbors. And so that's been the focus of my research for the past several years. Of course, it's an area where there's quite a lot of conflict, because you've read about probably the Ukraine conflict, and so I touch on that issue in my own research work.